Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harris and I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today I am going through chapter 59H of book 1 of The Wandering Inn. Now, the previous chapter, I've literally just recorded the recap and I basically clicked stop on the camera and then clicked go again. So I read both chapters back to back, which I think is good. And I think that ideally, if you're reading these H chapters should all be read back to back. Somebody told me about that earlier. Thank you, whoever that was. Genuinely very helpful. So this is a bit of a dark one. So a lot of this chapter is kind of a fairly harrowing action scene towards the end of the chapter, which is very well written. But we will go through an order of the events that take place. So Olism and Cheeria are hunting the depths of these ruins to try and find more treasure. So last time they defeated the zombie army in the ruins, but now they've basically hunting through this labyrinth of ruins to try and find some treasure to make it worth it. So basically they're going through and they're not finding anything. And they're checking every room, and even though there's hundreds of them or whatever, they are just not finding anything. And it's 2 hours later now, and they've seen a few more zombies, but like easily dealable with by the small groups that have split off. And then the Cheeria talks about how in her POV, her inner monologue, she talks about how she's worried that is this a waste of time? Have they lost 6 people and spent all this money and used all these resources, and actually turns out there's nothing there, and there's kind of there's all these, she says, there's all these stories of adventurers searching these big labyrinths and then finding out that actually it was just a grain storage 2,000 years ago and there's nothing left. That'd be bad for them, obviously, or they're not as bad as what comes later. All they've got is the gold that they found that's probably a trap, to try and get people to stand around while the undead army surrounds them. And then it turns out one of I can't remember his name now. What's the other lad? Gregor. One of Gregor, who is the Vanguard leader, one of his crew turns up and is like, "Oh, we found something. Possibly it's a treasury." They're like, "Oh, it's massive. It's at the very other side of the ruins, at down the other end of the passage." And basically it's sealed with magical runes, and Menez says that some of the runes look like there might be warnings. And Cheeria is like, "That doesn't sound like a vault to me. It sounds like a guarded treasury, the kind that has the nastiest monster waiting right behind the door." So basically it turns out that Gregor wants to open it, but Yvonne's like, "No, don't open it. Let's turn the room into a killing zone, and then once that's all set up, then open the door, and nothing can survive thousands of magical and physical traps." So they've even got bear traps, which they managed to bring down with them somehow. Then they keep looking around, and then so they're like, "Right, we're gonna go." But then Olism turns up and is like, "Oh, we found something. You got to come look at this." And they find an actual crypt. So they find a room full of coffins, and on the wall there is some writing in a language that no one understands. But it turns out that Cheeria has a translate spell, and let's have a look. So she says, it's ancient language that nobody really knows, but she's using this translation spell. Note here that it's made clear that all people in in world speak the same language. However, written languages are different, which is interesting and could be really interesting as like a world building thing later on. So definitely something that I'd like Paraba to return to. And then so I'm going to read the like poemy thing, the warning poem that's on the wall. It says, Skinner, Skinner, he'll eat your tails and tear off your skin. He'll pluck out your eyeballs and devour your kin. Skinner, Skinner, run while you can. Your flesh will be taken with a touch of his hand. Hide in the darkness, hide in the light. Fighting is useless, Skinner is fright. He takes our scales and hides our bones and makes this place our very last home. Skinner, Skinner, never open his door, or soon your bones will lie on his floor. Can you tell that I read a lot of rhyming stories to my son at bedtime? So, the rhyme is obviously terrifying, and everyone is terrified by it. And then there's a bit of discussion, like, oh, what's going on? What is the Skinner thing? Is Skinner the reason why the ruin exists? I think that's what a few people say here. But also, I feel like we were expecting the necromancer, can't remember his name, Azkaban, something like that. I'm sure it was an Azkarash, maybe. Azkaban's Harry Potter, isn't it? So I was expecting that necromancer to be the big bad in this, but I mean, that's not the case. I've read this chapter and I know it's not the case. So there's a bit of discussion about the Skinner, and then all the people in the room with danger sense suddenly get like the mega spider sense earthquake from hell, where they get basically danger sense as bad as they've ever had it before. And Olazum specifically is like, oh, we're in danger, extreme danger, we have to retreat. And he's like, I've never felt anything like that. When I was a child, the necromancer attacked. That's the closest I've felt. And so they go to regroup, and then Chiri's like, no, wait, I can hear something. And she's like, I can hear screaming. Everything basically goes real bad from here. So first off, the coffin lids open and all the bodies in there start to try and attack the horns. They end up running, and as they get to like the central corridor, the danger sense is like kicking off. They meet up with Yvonne, and then basically another adventurer like runs in, and they're like, what happened, what did you do? And the adventurer is like, he's absolutely terrified and he's just running away. And he's like, they're like, oh, did Gregor open the door? And he's like, no, it opened the door. And this man is so like terrified, so wanting to escape, that he like tries to fight Calrus, who is like an 8-foot minotaur. But he does eventually kick him enough to escape, and he runs off. And they're like, what is this Skinner thing? What's going on with this Skinner? And then they start hearing, it said, oh yeah, at the very edges of the light, something has appeared. Something white. It looked like a cloud. And it turns out that the cloud has Gregor's face. And looking closer, it's not a cloud. It's a giant white wall of skin, essentially, of dead skin. And the danger sense that everyone has is like kicking off so bad that they're struggling. This Skinner is basically a giant mega slug made out of the skin of the adventurers and of, hundreds of thousands possibly of other people that it's killed. And it literally basically like touches you, and then it can whip off your skin if it wants to. It's pretty gross. Suddenly then the zombies start to attack as well. So there's more zombies that have been hidden around, and then Skinner's like triggered them off. And then the Skinner has a fear spell effect, so basically it infears everyone so much that they can't really attack it, they can't fight back. Cheeria and Calrus, I think, are both able to like fight it enough to like make 1 or 2 attacks. But Calrus is then Calrus rips off not rips off, the Skinner rips off Calrus's arm. Just rips it off, and then Calrus is set upon by a group of zombies. And then Sostrum. So Sostrum is the first one to die. So obviously he actually dies before Calrus loses his arm. That's what kind of kicks Calrus into fighting back. But yeah, so Sostrum dies and no one even noticed him die. He basically dies off screen. And when I was reading this chapter, I'm thinking like, it's an odd choice to kill Sostrum when he's like the one Horn of Hammerhand who hasn't really had any screen time. Because like Jerry we've had POVs of, Calrus we've had POVs of, Cheeria we've had loads of screen time with. But like the one major Horn that we haven't really had any time with is Sostrum, and he's the one that's killed first. And I was like, well, that's basically like killing an NPC. It's not particularly interesting. And then it pulls Calrus's arm off, and then Calrus is basically mobbed by zombies. And Cheeria's like, okay, cool. Sostrum's dead, Calrus is dead, and she's like so terrified she can't move, she can't do anything. And then Jerry jumps in front of her and is like, run, I'll hold it for you. Which is pretty cool. Like, he knows he's going to die, and he's still like, I'll buy you some time. And he basically pushes her because she won't run away. And then Jerry, he dies. But he does throw some of the acid at it, and the acid does damage the dead skin on Skinner. So if you had enough of that acid, you could kill the Skinner, which I'm kind of guessing is going to be how they do it when it gets out into the real world. I'd be interested to see if that's what the Queen's been up to. Maybe like she's not actually sus, maybe she knows what's going on down there and she's there to help. So she's been getting the acid flies. Maybe that's what she's been doing, gathering and breeding acid flies or whatever, and she's going to just chuck acid at it. That'd be fun. There's like, death before dishonor is something Jerial says like right before he dies, which is cool. Nice way to do it. Cheeria sees Jerry dying and is pretty terrified. She's like, everyone's dead. I have to run. So there's like a thing where she's like, she'll die if she faces Skinner. She has to live for them. And then Skinner grabs her mouth. Sorry. I'm just reading the word mouth for some reason in this page. Skinner grabs her leg, and I'm like, all right, that's it. She's done. That's all the Horn's done for. But he pulls off her skin from just her leg and like sniffs it and is like, I'm not into it. So obviously he doesn't like half-elf skin. And then so she's like basically got one leg with no skin on it. She's injured. She's being attacked by skeletons and zombies, and her magic robes are like barely protecting her. Then Ivlon is killed, it looks like. And then Cheeria then breaks her wand, which breaking your wand like releases the magical energy. Then she like redirects it and tries to take Skinner out, but it doesn't work, unfortunately. She ends up killing a Crypt Lord, which is pretty cool, but it's not really enough. And then looks like Yvonne leaves as she runs out. So that's good, because she was an interesting character. I wanted to see more from her. And then let's have a look. So yeah, so Cheeria is basically there, and then she's attacked by multiple zombies, and then she's killed finally by a ghoul, which sucks. And we get a little bit of scene setting at the end. It goes, oh, the darkness covered the ruins as the illumination spell went out. And it's like, oh, the thing that stole flesh and hunted the living raised its head towards the surface, which is pretty cool. It says like, oh, it began to move upwards. It had harvested enough flesh. Now he would take the rest. He left the ruins and left behind only death. So that's it. That's all of the Horns of Hammerad dead. The best supporting cast in this series, they're all dead. We know, I mean, we don't see Kalruz die. We do see Cheeria die on screen, and we see Jeriel die on screen, Sostrom. So because we haven't seen explicitly Kalruz die, and he hasn't kind of had a big epic death scene, he's probably not dead. But we have, again, so that kind of sucks, because I like these characters, and I feel like there's more story for all of them, or at least for Cheeria and for Kalruz. Again, Kalruz isn't dead probably. But yeah, there's more story for Cheeria. So I'm not going to go on and read the next chapter because it is getting a little bit late. But if you have enjoyed me talking about reading this chapter, drop a comment down below and chat with me about what I've just read and your thoughts. If you want to drop a like, then please do like this video if you liked it. And of course, subscribe to the channel, which I massively appreciate. Thanks so much for your time. Goodbye.